Here is 2.7 solving proportions. There are 8 boxes. Let's start off with a definition. Something very important here. A proportion is an equation that states that two ratios are equal to each other. Here's an example of what we mean by a proportion. It says, example, solve using the multiplication property. All right, I want to begin by pointing out to you guys that this right here is a ratio, right? It's a comparison of two numbers by division. This over here is another ratio. It's a comparison of two numbers by division. Well, once we set them equal to each other, then collectively we have what's known as a proportion. So that's what we mean by an equation, right, that states that two ratios are set equal to each other. Okay? So I'm going to erase all of this so we can actually solve this. It says to solve using the multiplication property. Well, the variable that I'm trying to solve for is m. All right? In order to get m by itself, I take note of the fact that right now m is being divided by 12. So I'm going to multiply both sides of my equation by 12 to cancel out the 12s on the right hand side, because 12 divided by 12 of course is 1. So all I'm left with is this. M has to be 12 times 7 all divided by 8. And you can run that through your calculator if you like, but you would see that m is equal to 10.5. And that is how we would solve that proportion using the multiplication property. Here's box number 2. Let's do another example together. It says solve using the multiplication property. Okay, well, I'm solving for my variable x, which is right here, and I'm noticing right now that x is being divided by 7. So the inverse operation of division, of course, is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply both sides of my equation by 7 in order to cancel out the 7s on the left-hand side, because 7 divided by 7 is the number 1, and 1 times x is just x. So what I'm left with is this. X is now equal to 4 times 7 all divided by 5. Well, 4 times 7 is 28, and it's still all divided by 5. So you can run that through your calculator if you like, and you can get a decimal point of about 5.6. So we have solved the proportion using the multiplication property. Box number 3 is the cross product property of a proportion. Many of you might be familiar with this property as opposed to the multiplication property. It's an if-then statement. The if part says that if two ratios are set equal to each other in a proportion, so notice I have this ratio and I have this ratio, and they're set equal to each other. So if I have this, so if I have A over B equals C over D, then it must be true that the cross product, so A times D has to be equal to the cross product of B times C. B times C. This is called the cross product property of proportion, and we're going to use this property to solve some examples coming up. Here's box number 4. The directions say solve the proportion using the cross product property of equality. Okay, so I have 4 over 3 equals 8 over x. I'm going to use the cross product property. So I'm going to say x times 4, or 4x, it's the same thing, x times 4 or 4 times x, has to be equal to 3 times 8. 3 times 8. And I'll use parentheses here. Okay? So what we get here is 4x is now equal to 24. And we want to divide both sides by 4. Divide both sides by 4. So x is equal to 6. And we can check to see if this proportion is true, right? 4 over 3 is the same thing as 8 over 6. I know that this is true because if I multiply this one by 2 and I multiply that one by 2, notice I get the exact same proportion. So 4/3 is the same thing as 8 over 6. That's an example of the cross product property. Box number 5 is a U-try. I would like you to solve the proportion using the cross product property of equality. It says y divided by 3 is equal to 3 divided by 5. Here is how you solve this. I'm going to use the cross product property. So I'm going to say 5 times y has to be the same thing as 3 times 3. 3 times 3. So that means that 5 times y has to be the same thing as 9. And I'm going to divide both sides by 5. So I'm going to get y is approximately 9 divided by 5. Or you can run that through your calculator if you'd like, and you get approximately 1.8. Either one is correct. For box number 6, I'd like you to answer the following question. Would you rather use the cross product property or the multiplication property of equality to solve this proportion, 3 over 5 equals 13 over b? I'd like you to tell me which one you would use and why. Box number 7 is an example of a multi-step proportion. It says that b minus 8 divided by 5 is equal to b plus 3 divided by 4. So I want you to consider the numerator in a set of parentheses as one number. It will help you if you consider that to be one number. Same thing on the right hand side. Consider the b plus 3 to be an entire number, so keep it together. We're going to use the cross product, so I'm going to multiply 4 times that whole number, b minus 8, so it would look like this when you write it out. 4 times the product of b minus 8 has to equal, well, the other side, of course, is going to be 5 times the whole product of b plus 3. So this is going to be 5 times the product of b plus 3. Then I'm going to go ahead and distribute the 4 on the left-hand side. So 4 times b gives me 4b. 4 times a negative 8 is negative 32. On the other side equals 5 times b is worth 5b. And 5 times a positive 3 is worth 15. Okay, so I'm going to bring this problem up here so I can work it out. It says 4b minus 32 is equal to 5b plus 15. Now remember, I'm solving for b. So I want to get my b's to one side of the equation. I'm going to choose the left side. So I'm going to subtract 5b from both sides of the equation, 5b. Okay? So 4b take away 5b is negative 1b. I'll write that as negative b. Minus 32 is still equal to 15. Now, I want to get b by itself, so I'm going to add 32 to both sides. Add 32 to both sides of my equation, and I get negative b is equal to 15 and 32 is equal to 47. But I don't want negative b, I want b by itself. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 1 or divide both sides by negative 1. Either way, it's fine. So I'll go ahead and divide by negative 1, divide by negative 1. And we get an answer that b is equal to negative 47. And that is how we would solve a multi-step proportion. The key is to consider this and this as a single number and not to break them up. Box number 8. The last box of the lesson is a U-try. I would like you to solve the multi-step proportion using the cross product property. Okay, here is the solution. I'm going to use the cross product property and say that 6 times n is equal to 5 times the entire sum of 2n plus 4. I'm treating that part as an entire number by itself. I want you to do that. Okay, carrying on, I get 6n is equal to, I'm going to distribute. 5 times 2n is worth 10n, and then 5 times 4, of course, is positive 20. Now I want to get n by itself, so I'm going to subtract 10n from this side of the equation, and I'm going to subtract 10n from this side of the equation. 6n minus 10n is negative 4n is now equal to, on the other side, This cancels out to 0, and I have a positive 20. I'm going to now divide both sides by -4 because that's the inverse operation of multiplying by -4. Divide by -4, and I see that n is now worth -5.